Hello, everyone, and a good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you might be around the world, and welcome today to today's special Heriot-Watt University in conjunction with Postgrad Insights. Yesterday, we heard from the mathematics department. Today, we're hearing once again from the actuary department. We actually had a webinar a couple of months ago, which was extremely successful, which has meant that we've had to rerun it because there was so much interest, which is fantastic. A reminder, if you are watching live today, it is a live session, so you can use the chat facility, Q&A facility. If you are watching on socials, this will be streamed on Facebook. Please use the messenger facility. We will get around to your questions if it is deemed viable and essential that we ask it. If not, we will reach out to you after the session. But for now, I'd like to hand you over to Jane. She'll be taking you through to the next hour and a quarter. I'll be back for the very end after the Q&A. If anyone has any questions, pop it in the chat. Thank you very much. Jane, over to you.
Brilliant. Thank you, Gareth. Hello, everyone. And yes, thanks, Gareth, for kicking things off. Thank you, everybody, for coming to join us today, for joining this webinar on becoming an actuary. Maybe just to introduce myself firstly. So my name is Jane Braithwaite, formerly Jane Gormley, and I'm a lecturer here at Heriot-Watt University. But I'm also a qualified actuary. So I used to work as an actuary in the world of finance. And specifically, I worked for a consulting firm called PwC. I worked on the actuarial services team, or the risk modelling services team, as it's called now. And I did lots of different jobs inside of PwC, all of it involving some kind of mathematical problem solving, quite a lot of using spreadsheets to solve problems, and a little bit of computer programming here and there too. So both insurance companies and banks were our clients when I worked there, and we worked with them to help find the right solutions for them. So for example, if an insurance company was launching a new product, we helped them with calculations and the tools that they needed to decide on a price to charge for their customers for this new product. Or for example, if an insurer wanted to buy in another insurance company, we would help both parties decide a price to be agreed on that. And then after PwC, I joined a company called SCOR. It's a reinsurance company, which is essentially insurance for insurance companies. And during my time working in SCOR, I had lots of different roles, but my most recent one before I left industry was that I worked as a senior actuarial manager. And that's where I managed the calculations and the reporting of, things like profits, assets, liabilities for a huge part of SCOR's life insurance business every quarter. So a lot of that involved kind of managing a team of actuaries to produce calculations, results, and then working with more senior members of the team, like the CEO, the CFO, or the CRO, to communicate those numbers to them and to make sure that they understood those numbers so that we could help them make the right decisions for the company and for SCOR. So I really enjoyed my time working in industry. There was great variety. No 2 days were the same. It was challenging work, but very rewarding. And I met a lot of interesting people that I'm still very much in contact with now. So I then left and I became a lecturer here at Heriot-Watt, where I suppose I tried to bring some of that industry experience into the classroom. And you'll hopefully get to experience that if you do take maybe my life insurance course, which is the one that I teach on our actuarial management programs. So what are we going to talk about today? Why are we here? We're going to have a chat about becoming an actuary. So what an actuary is, to start off with, what an actuary does, and also how you can become one, which you can do through two different routes. You can either work and become one that way, or you can go to university and become one that way. Which pathway you choose is completely up to you and is your choice. And really what we want to do with this webinar today is make you think about that choice and make you think about whether this career as an actuary is something that you're really interested in. So we will talk through our actuarial MSc programs that we have on offer here at Heriot-Watt. And we have programs for students that are at various stages of their journey to becoming an actuary. And I'm conscious, there's probably a wide variety of you on the webinar today. Some of you may have just heard of this career path quite recently, while others, you might already be well on your way to becoming a qualified actuary. And we have programs for you regardless of which stage you're at on this journey. And luckily, we'll also be joined by two of our current students, Krish and Gani. and we'll meet them a little bit later. But they have very kindly offered to tell you a little bit about their experience studying on our actuarial management programs this year. And so I guess after all of that, we do have time for questions. So we have a Q&A session at the end. So if you do have any questions as we go along, please just type them into the chat or the Q&A box, and we can get to them a little bit later on. At the end, then we'll pick all of those questions up and go through them at that stage. We'll also be joined by Sarah on our admissions team. She will be on hand to support with any questions you might have in terms of the application process, or when it comes to visas or English language requirements or anything like that. Okay, so let's kick off. Okay, we'll kick off with this question that I suppose I most commonly get asked as an actuary, and that is, what is an actuary? So a very simple way of thinking about an actuary is thinking of them as a little bit like a financial fortune teller, in that they try to predict the future. Except instead of using a crystal ball like a usual fortune teller might do, they use maths and statistics to try and predict the future. So we know there's lots of uncertainty about what's going to happen in the future, and essentially actuaries try to make sense of that uncertainty by trying to figure out what the probability of an event what the probability is of an event happening in the future, what the financial impact might be if that event does happen in the future, and how you might reduce the financial impact if the event does happen. So in particular, there's quite a lot of uncertainty in the world of finance, and there's a lot of money on the line if things go wrong, when you don't get predictions of the future right in the world of finance. And so that is why actuaries can be really helpful to finance companies and work in the area of finance to help those companies understand their business better and to plan for the future better. So actuaries work in things like insurance companies like I have, in pensions, in banking, in investment banking, and for governments and regulators. And often actuaries are now working in the space of aviation finance too. So in terms of insurance, that's really the one of the most common areas that actuaries work in. And really what the crux of insurance is about is that if something bad happens to you, then the insurer can help you and compensate you. So for instance, if I drop my phone and I break it, I need to go and buy a new phone. But maybe I don't like that risk. I don't want to be exposed to the chance, of that happening and having to go buy a new phone. So what I can do is I can buy insurance on my phone, so that if I drop my phone and break it, either the insurance company gets me a new phone, or they give me money so that I can buy a new phone. And there's lots of different types of risks like that people want protection from. And there's lots of insurance companies that are offering that protection against those risks. And actuaries are really experts in working out the probability of things like my phone breaking, what the cost might be if the phone does break, and then subsequently figuring out what price people should pay to take out insurance for those types of risks. Actuaries I've written there are also experts in data science, so analysing large data sets to predict the future. And traditionally, actuaries have kind of used mathematical tools to do that. And that's most of what you learn at the start when you go down the route of becoming an actuary. But some of the more modern tools are machine learning type tools, which is where you use computers to kind of predict the future instead. And it's really up to you which of those tools that you use. And actuaries are more commonly starting to use those machine learning tools now. Actuaries are professionals. So as an actuary is a professional, it's like a lawyer, a doctor, an accountant is a professional. So these people, they provide a certain role in society that we expect them to operate to a certain minimum standard. So for instance, you'd expect, a doctor that's, cutting you open and doing surgery on you to be good at their job, remove the correct things and sew you up again so that you're alive the next day. And in the same way, we'd expect an actuary to be good at doing their calculations that they're required to do. And we expect them to do them accurately and well, so that the correct numbers are produced at the end of the day and the correct decisions are made at the end of the day. We also say that actuaries are experts in risk. And sometimes it can be kind of difficult to understand what we mean when we say experts in risk. So in this next slide, I've kind of an example to try and help us think about the way that actuaries think and what we mean when we say actuaries are experts in risk. So we've kind of got this silly little picture here on the right-hand side of this mouse with some cheese and a mousetrap. and they're wearing a crash helmet. So what is this supposed to illustrate? It's supposed to illustrate how an actuary might think and to help us maybe to get into the mindset of thinking like an actuary. So actuaries are going to think about, in this situation, what's the good thing that could happen here? So the good thing is that the mouse could get the cheese and the trap doesn't snap. Then they might think about what's the bad thing that could happen in this situation. The bad thing is that the mouse tries to get the cheese, the trap snaps, and it kills the mouse. And the actuary then is going to think about, well, what's the probability of the mouse successfully getting the cheese and running off with it and eating it? Or what's the probability of the trap snapping and killing the mouse? So in order to figure out that, the actuary is going to use lots of data on mice and mouse traps from the past, and they're going to use maths and statistics and potentially some machine learning techniques to figure out, well, what's the chance of that mouse being successful in getting the cheese or not? Then, and I think this is kind of the extra bit that requires what we might call professional judgment in the actuarial space, but we might think about things that the mouse could do differently to change what the data says or to change our probabilities. So for instance, if this mouse takes the cheese off really slowly off the mouse trap, then maybe it has an increased probability of getting away with the cheese. And that's what we call kind of changing the probability, changing the impact. And you can see I've given this mouse a silly little crash helmet here. And the idea here is that if they don't get the cheese and the trap snaps, maybe the crash helmet stops the mouse from dying. So if you like, I've reduced the impact of the bad thing happening if the trap does snap. So actuaries will take all the data, make the prediction, and then try to change that prediction based on their judgment of how people might change things. And then they'll decide what is the price of the risk. So if the mouse wanted to buy insurance, actuaries might try to figure out how much they should pay for that insurance. So it's a silly little example, but I suppose gets you thinking about how actuaries think. So why become an actuary? You might be asking, okay, I have an idea of what how an actuary might think and what they are, but what's all the fuss about? So I'm guessing that a lot of you, if you're on the webinar at this stage, you might have already typed into Google something like best jobs if you're good at maths. And certainly there's no doubt that actuary appears time and time again in those searches. And it is one of the top ranked jobs in the world and in the UK. And I suppose one of the key reasons for that is that it pays an extremely competitive salary. And I'll show you an example of the salaries in the next slide. However, money can't buy you happiness. And you'll be glad to hear that there's many other reasons that you might like to be an actuary. One key reason, I suppose, from my perspective, is that it's very rewarding. So if you like maths and if you're good at maths and you like using maths to solve real world problems, then you're going to like this kind of job. And so if you're good at maths, then it's easy for you to do this kind of job. And it will be easy for you to get through the exams to do this kind of job. So we're kind of looking for someone who's done maths, statistics, maybe science, economics, something like that as their undergraduate degree to go through this route to becoming an actuary. And also, if you're interested in working anywhere in the world, this qualification as an actuary is a very global one. So maths is the same in all countries around the world. It doesn't matter if I'm in Australia, India, China, Malaysia, the US, the UK, maths is the same. And that's different to, say, if you were a lawyer. If you're a lawyer in the UK and I went to Australia, I might have to retrain for some years before I could be a lawyer in Australia. But once you're qualified as an actuary, or even before then, you can work anywhere in the world with very little retraining. So if you want to travel, you can travel. And that's something that really appealed to me when I went down the route of becoming an actuary. So for example, in my last job, I worked for an international company. And because of that, I had the opportunity to travel to the US, to Asia, and many nice cities in Europe here, to work with my colleagues there for short periods of time. So by becoming an actuary, it gave me that opportunity to see parts of the world that I would never have visited otherwise or got a chance to see otherwise. There's also excellent job security with a job like an actuary. So our graduates at Heriot-Watt are always in high demand, and Connie will talk to you a little bit about that later on. So it's a very clear career path after university, which makes it very straightforward for graduates to get a job afterwards. And in terms of work-life balance, usually an actuary works Monday to Friday, usually no need to work weekends, and you certainly shouldn't need to work night shifts. And this means that it's a great way of making sure that you can kind of keep up your hobbies, whether you like sports or music or reading or travel. And most companies also offer flexible working arrangements for actuaries. So you might be able to work remotely sometimes or work from home some days in your working week, which is a nice perk of this type of job too. So this slide shows actuarial salaries. So actuaries are extremely well paid for what they do. They're in demand and not everyone can do maths. And so that leads to high salaries for this kind of thing. So once you're qualified as an actuary, you've passed all the exams that you need to pass, you tend to be somewhere in the range of £60,000 to £75,000 in UK money. And I've just put some exchange rates up here, rough exchange rates, to try and help you to turn those numbers into numbers that you might be more familiar with. And as you gain more experience, as you'll see, you can quickly move up the salary bands and be earning well into the six-figure range when it comes to pounds sterling. And certainly that's from my experience when I was working in the industry, that you do quickly move up the salary ranks once you get in the door of a company. So I think this table makes it very clear, an actuary is very well paid. Okay, so maybe you're sold now on the idea of becoming an actuary. How do you become one? You have to pass lots of exams, and I guess that's what this slide here is supposed to show. Now, I'm not expecting you to be able to read all of this writing here on the right-hand side of the slide, but the colours are very useful in this right-hand side kind of diagram. Basically, to become a qualified actuary, you've got to do 7 purple exams, you've got to do 3 green exams, you've got to do 2 orange exams, and then 1 red exam. So the purple exams on the slides, these are the mathematical exams. So they're the ones that you do, to build your mathematical toolkit to analyze the data well and to predict the future. And once you've done those mathematical or statistical exams, you then do the 3 green exams. And that's where you start to explain what the maths means to other people in words. So in a company, you might have to speak to the sales team, you might have to speak to the marketing team, you might have to speak to the board of directors. And these people are not maths experts like you might be. And if you want them to make the right decision, then you need them to be able to understand what you're saying. So you need to be able to explain what the maths is doing and what it's saying really well. So becoming an actuary isn't just training you to be a data science expert and to be a maths and statistics expert. This is really training you to be a professional, where yes, you're a data science expert, but you also interact with other people in order to make things happen, and you interact with them really well. And that interaction, I think, is what makes this career quite fun from my perspective. So after the green exams, then you have to do 2 of the orange exams. So you don't have to do all of them there on the diagram. You just have to do 2. And this is where you start to specialize as an actuary. So you may do a course in life insurance like I did, or you may do a course in pensions, investments, general insurance. You choose the ones that you want to do. And then out of the red exams, you just have to do 1 of those. But you do that one outside of university. So you can't do the red one in university, you must do it in work. But all of the purple, the green and the orange exams, you can do either in work or with us here at Heriot-Watt University. You also need to do 3 years of work experience to get that badge of being a qualified actuary. So that's part of getting that status of being a qualified actuary. In terms of ways of becoming an actuary, you've got to study exams, we've covered that, but you can do those exams either in work or you can do most of them in university. And if you do them in work, it'll roughly take you about 5 to 7 years to qualify as an actuary. And if you do them in university, it'll take you roughly 3 to 4 years to qualify as an actuary. So that's, a big difference between work and university, but it certainly doesn't tell you which one is best for you. So if you're trying to decide between those, there are pros and cons to both options. So in terms of the workplace, I guess the best thing about going straight into work and doing your exams while working is that you get money sooner. You might have been living like a student now for some time, and it's really nice to be paid well and to be able to afford things, I guess, more easily, be less worried about money. So that's definitely an advantage. A downside on the other side is that when you're doing the exams while working, you tend to be doing those exams alone or online in the evenings, maybe at weekends. But the positive is maybe you're at work and that kind of helps with some of the later exams. It gives you some context. Alternatively, you can go down the route of doing the exams through university. And really the big pro is that usually students get those exams done faster when they go down that route. So you get to concentrate on exams and exams only. You don't need to worry about work. And instead of squeezing, studying at the weekends and at night time, you have that full mental space to focus on your study at university. You also have this extra safety net if you do the exams through the university called an accreditation average. So when you're studying the workplace, whether you get an exam or not is just based on that single exam that you sit. So if you fail an exam, you have to resit it. But through university, we have this thing called an accreditation average for universities that are accredited. And not all universities are accredited, and that is not always obvious from the website whether they are accredited or not. But the nice thing is about an accredited university is that you are protected by this accreditation average. And really what that means is that if you mess up an exam, it doesn't matter if your average across the programs is high enough. You still pass and get an exemption from that professional exam. And we have this accreditation average at Heriot-Watt. So it allows you to kind of mess things up on one side as long as your average across the program is good. Another bonus of studying at university is that the university pass rates are much higher than the workplace, and mainly because you're studying in person with real life quality teachers every day that are supporting you with your learning for the exams. And that's a huge driver of why those pass rates are so much higher at the university stage. So if you have decided that you do want to make use of university to get through some of these exams or all of these exams, then we have a number of different programs that you can use to do that. So if you're in a situation where you've not done any actuarial exams yet, the programs you would choose between are the MSc in Actuarial Science and the MSc in Actuarial Science and Management. So they're the two you choose between. The MSc in Actuarial Science is a one-year program. It covers all of the purple exams, so the mathematical exams that you need to do as an actuary. And the MSc in Actuarial Science and Management is a two-year program, and that program gets you very close to full qualification as an actuary. So you do the purple exams, the green exams, and your choice in this case of three of the orange exams. If you've already passed some of the actuarial exams, then we have a different set of programs for you. And they are the MSc in Actuarial Management and the MSc in Actuarial Management with Data Science. And these cover the green exams and the orange exams. So you can kind of think of the actuarial science type programs as all mathematics. Actuarial Science and Management is a mixture of maths and words. And then the courses on Actuarial Management or Actuarial Management with Data Science are much more words-based. There is some maths in those programs, but much more explaining what the maths means in words. Currently across our programs, we have about 90 students across all of these programs. The data science program is getting hugely popular, and we have a huge amount of applications for that program this year. So what that means in this context is really learning about machine learning in the context of insurance and risk and management. So machine learning is really a buzzword at the moment, and really that's where you cover machine learning, but we really put it in the context of being an actuary and the space of insurance. Now, what I would say is only choose this actuarial management with data science program if you like programming. Not everyone has to be a programmer, and many in the people in the industry are not. But if you do like programming and if you think that's fun, then this is a really good choice for you, this last program. It looks really good on your CV, and there's lots of people in companies that don't have this knowledge or experience yet on machine learning. And a lot of people are saying that there's going to be more and more demand for actuaries that know about machine learning and AI. So it's a really good program to think about. And I'm just going to go through each of the programs, or three of them anyway, in a little bit more detail, just to make sure I haven't missed out on anything. So the MSc in Actuarial Science, it's all the maths. It covers those exam codes that you're seeing on screen. So CB1, CB2, CM1, CM2, CS1, CS2. And the equivalent of the IFOA or Institute and Faculty of Actuary exams. Our program is accredited, as I said. That means you can get exemptions in a couple of ways. You can either do it one exam at a time. So if you get a high score in CB1, then you get that exemption or pass. You get a high score in CB2, you get that high exemption or pass. But you can also get exams through the accreditation average. So if your average across the program is high enough and you mess up CB1, but your average is good across everything altogether, you still get that exemption from CB1. So this accreditation average is really helpful. In this program, you're using probability statistics to predict the future. You'll learn how to use programming languages such as R, and there's also an introduction to Python course that you can also do. And you'll also be using Excel as well inside of that program. The program has been recently refreshed in the last year, I guess, to consolidate the number of exams and coursework that you need to do on this program. And that program is going really well this year. And the huge program of this, or the huge bonus of this actuarial program, is that it offers students the opportunity to visit one of our big employers here in Edinburgh, where students can present to a panel of actuaries working in industry. So they went out and presented to a panel of actuaries in Phoenix, which is a huge life insurance company here in Edinburgh, which was a really nice new thing that we've added to the program this year. In terms of the MSc in Actuarial Management then, the exam codes that you can get exemptions from are CP1, CP2, CP3, and also your choice of at least 3 of these orange subjects. So SP2, SP4, SP5, SP6, SP7, SP8, or SP9. And that stands for life insurance, pensions, investments, derivatives, enterprise risk management, and general insurance. And usually you'll pick 3 or 4. The IFOA only requires you to pass 2, but it can be a good idea to take more. Because if you mess one up, it doesn't matter, you'll still meet the requirements, and it can be valuable to have done more to be able to perform well in interviews across different types of actuarial work. SP7 and SP8 are the general insurance courses. These are new courses, and starting in September, this will be the first year that these subjects will be taught here at Heriot-Watt, and we're absolutely delighted to have this option available for our students starting in September that do want to go down this route of specialising in general insurance. Subject SP9 grants you an extra qualification that's called Chartered Enterprise Risk Actuary. It's hugely popular with us here at Heriot-Watt. Not all universities offer this, and many students, I guess, choose to come here at Heriot-Watt because we offer the SP9 exemption. That's an exam I did when I went down to qualify down the route of qualifying as an actuary. I also chose SP2. Alternatively, then, instead of taking 3 or 4 SP courses, you can take 2 or 3 SP courses and take 1 or 2 of the earlier purple subjects if you want to catch up in some areas. So you can catch up on CB1 and CB2, or you can catch up on CM2, or you can catch up on CS2. And again, something new for September is that we have this option to catch up on CS2, which we haven't offered before, and we're very happy now to be able to offer that option to our students now. One thing maybe to keep in mind is if you do want to catch up on CS2, you won't be able to take the SP9 Enterprise Risk Management subject. You'll have to do some of the many other SP subjects that we do offer, because some knowledge of CS2 is needed to do well in the SP9 courses. Similarly, if you want to do CM2, you can't do the derivatives course, SP6, because CM2 has some pre-assumed knowledge for the SPC. CM2 is pre-assumed knowledge for the SP6 subject. The Actuarial Management Programme is a fully accredited programme, just like the previous degree programme, so it gives you that average protection. It's designed to get you ready for work in business, this type of programme. And if you're entering this, you're already a mathematical expert. We now need you to perform well in a business environment, which is really the focus of this type of programme. And then briefly, the MSc in Actuarial Management with Data Science is very similar to the MSc in Actuarial Management, but it doesn't require 3 or 4 orange SP courses to be taken. Instead, you take 1 less SP course to the Actuarial Management programme. And in place of that 1 less SP course, you take courses in machine learning. And that's becoming increasingly popular, as I mentioned, and will be more useful in the future. So you choose this programme if you enjoy programming. And really the whole idea behind the programme is, I suppose, to create new pathways for actuaries and give our students an opportunity to learn more about data science and machine learning in the context of being an actuary. And you'll hear a lot of people saying it is the future for actuaries. So it's a programme we're very proud of. In the summer then, finally, after the main courses, you'll work on 2 5-week case studies, okay? You have a choice of at least 4 case studies to work on, and you choose 2. And you can kind of think of these as big assignments or big coursework pieces where you'll write a report. And the report length is kind of similar to what you might write in a business setting when you're proposing ideas to directors. And you'll practice this twice, which I suppose helps you to perform well quickly in your first job and impress your manager. Most students choose the case study option, but about 5 to 10 students will choose something called an industry project. So this is where we've gone out to industry, to companies, asked them if they're willing to have a student to do a project for them, and if so, to tell us what project they're willing to offer. So we get all these companies, and we tell you then in February of the second semester what projects and companies are on offer, and you decide if you want to apply for any of those projects. And if you do apply, the company offering the industry project will interview you, and if they like you, they'll offer you the place on the project. And this is really great because you're working with a real company, it looks good on your CV, and the company might give you a nice reference at the end, but they might also offer you a job at the end if they really like you. So this is really quite a nice way to accelerate your way into the industry. However, it is one big project, it's one big 30-page report, and you have to do well on that in order to get your MSc, whereas the 2 case studies are likely a safer option because you can do one case study less well, better in the other, and you still get a good MSc. And that's part of the reason why a lot of students will choose the case study option over the industry project. But if you want to take the risk and it's attractive to you, the option is there to apply for those industry projects. In terms of price reductions or scholarships, I know some of you had questions on that. We have a number of different price reductions available. The first is the MSc in Actuarial Science and Management. It's our 2-year programme, and doing the 2-year degree is cheaper than doing the 2 separate 1-year degrees. And as I said before, that's the MSc that allows you to do all but 2 of the exams that you need to become a fully qualified actuary. So if you do this programme, the only exams you get all of the exemptions from the programme, the only exams you'll have left to do to qualify are the SA exam, the RED exam, and CB3, which is a much easier exam out of them all. Secondly, the Heriot-Watt graduates get an alumni discount, which is a 20% discount on fees. So if you've studied your undergraduate here, you'll be entitled to that. And finally, one of the scholarships, I guess, that might be most appealing to you is our Heriot-Watt Actuarial Scholarship for academic excellence. So if you can show great grades from your undergraduate degree, or you can show that you've all of the exemptions cleared from the earlier exams, or you've passed some of the earlier purple exams, or you have some really great work experience, you will be awarded this scholarship, which offers a 20% discount on fees. And if you're awarded this, it will be on your offer letter. You don't need to specifically apply for this scholarship yourself. We decide if you were eligible for this scholarship, and when your application comes in, we make that decision and we'll put it in the offer letter if you're eligible for that. So hopefully that makes sense. So I've done a lot of talking, conscious I've done maybe too much talking at this point. So I think it's time we heard from someone else for a while. And so I'm very delighted to welcome both Ngani Haruva and Krish Mehta to today's webinar to speak to you a little bit about their experience of studying on our programs, give you a bit more information in terms of what's involved in the actuarial programs, and help you get a better feel, I guess, for what it's like to study with us here at Heriot-Watt. So I will call on Ngani first, maybe to kick things off and to give you a bit of an overview of her experience and the teaching exemptions and career opportunities that we have here at the university.
Thank you, Jane. Hi everyone, I'm Ngani. I'm currently on the MSc Actuarial Management programme. I recently just graduated from a bachelor's in actuarial science, and I decided to progress directly from this to a master's here at Heriot-Watt for 3 main reasons: the teaching quality, the exemptions opportunities, and the career prospects. So in terms of the teaching here at Heriot-Watt, all teaching takes place in person, comprising of lectures, tutorials, and office hours. We benefit from 4 hours of contact time per week for each subject, which is quite high in comparison to other universities, particularly for those later stage SP exams. We also benefit from having lectures take place in smaller classroom settings rather than larger lecture theatres. I think this adds a more personal element to the learning environment. In terms of the exemptions here at Heriot-Watt, All programs are fully accredited, as Jane mentioned, with the IFA, meaning that we still study the same curricula. However, we're just assessed separately and study for the exams differently than if we were to sit directly with the IFA. All course materials are spread across 2 semesters, meaning that for each subject we cover 50% of the content from across both semesters. So from September to the end of November, we cover the first half, and this is assessed in the December exam diet. And then the remaining 50% is gone through from January to the end of April, and it's again assessed in the April or May exam. So we have paper 1 and paper 2 per subject. I think this helps in 2 ways. The first, it helps in terms of actually understanding the material. I think it's a lot easier to study for the exams as they're in smaller chunks. And also it helps again with diversifying your risk, as if paper 1 doesn't go too well, you've still got paper 2 to fall back onto. We also benefit from the exemption accreditation, as Jane mentioned, and from courseworks contributing 20% to our final marks. Heriot-Watt's also a designated Centre of Actuarial Excellence, and essentially what that means is a professional body, in this instance the Society of Actuaries of North America, has come in and looked at Heriot-Watt's actuarial programmes and deemed these as outstanding in reflection of their research quality, the teaching quality, and speaking to various different students and gaining their views. It was the first university in the entire of Europe to receive this designation, and it's also one of 2 universities in Europe to currently hold this designation. And I think this just reassures students that by studying at Heriot-Watt, you are studying at a top-tier university that's recognised globally for outstanding actuarial programmes. Whilst the programmes do spend a lot of time preparing us for exams and helping us ensure that we get exemptions, we do also spend some time preparing for our careers and going beyond the exam theory. This is done through, for instance, courseworks. A lot of the courseworks that we do have are practical exercises that do mirror tasks which we may face in the workplace. In addition to this, in classes, we do spend time learning about the wider actuarial industry. For instance, what changes are occurring, challenges, current trends. And I think not only does this help us to stay well informed with the industry, but these also serve as valuable conversation points in interview settings. We also develop softer skills such as communication skills, presentation skills, negotiation skills, and classes often provide a safe space to practice these, and we do receive very detailed feedback on this to help us grow in confidence in these areas. Heriot-Watt also has a very dedicated careers department, and they work hard in ensuring that students are well versed on the different career opportunities that are out there. They offer a host of mock assessment centres, interview practice sessions, and they can also review your application before you send them off to companies. Heriot-Watt's also very proud of their employability statistics. I think on the next page we can see all the different types of companies that students go on to work for. Nearly 100% are in full-time employment after 6 months of studying on the programs, and over 90% of these are in actuarial roles. I believe the split for the different types of companies students do tend to work for are 50% of them being insurance companies and the other 50% being consultancy firms. As we can see here, consultancies like the Big Four, insurance companies like Aviva, Legal & General, investment companies like Aberdeen, and regulators like the Bank of England. And if we were to look even further into the future, we can see on the next slide that Heriot-Watt has served as a great place dedicated to launching successful careers for students. I think in the past we've had over 26 CEOs, 5 students have gone on to become presidents of various different professional actuarial associations, and a large number of students have gone on into C-suite executive roles such as partners, directors, and CFOs of various different companies. There was also a recent statistic that just was released that Heriot-Watt was the #1 university in the whole of Scotland for producing CEOs and managing directors. And lastly, Heriot-Watt also has very close ties with the actuarial industry. We often hear from experienced actuaries who come in to give guest lectures to us and discuss their career paths and what they do on a day-to-day basis. The Actuarial Society also hosts an annual conference which comprises of a panel of experienced actuaries discussing what they do again on a day-to-day basis and give advice to students. There's also the careers fairs. There are 2 across the year. The first is for all sectors, and the second is primarily for actuarial recruitment. We also learn from industry experts, which are a mix of experienced actuaries and also world-renowned researchers within the actuarial space. I'm also given real-world opportunities to visit employers and attend different IFA events. For instance, myself and Chris, who we'll hear from in a moment, were given the opportunity to attend the Actuarial Association of Europe's conference, which again was an incredible event to meet with and network with different experienced actuaries. And that's everything for myself. Feel free to reach out on UniBuddy. I think Chris has a link to that at the end of his slides. And I'm going to hand over to Chris now for him to discuss his experiences.
Thank you, Connie. Thank you. That's really helpful to get an overview on that. And I think Connie's probably being quite humble. She's definitely someone that's worth reaching out to. She has secured a role as part of the industry project, and she has a graduate role secured in September as well. So she's certainly a good person to go to if you have any questions in terms of careers and going down that route. Thanks, Connie. So next we have Krish Mehta, also studying on our MSc Actuarial Management programme. It's going to give you a small bit of an insight, maybe a little bit about student life, and bust a few myths that might be out there in terms of becoming an actuary and studying to being an actuary. So thanks, Connie, and we'll hear from you now, Krish, if that suits.
Yeah. Thanks, Jane. Thanks, Connie, for the intro. So let me just brief you about myself. So I graduated last year in April 2024. And during my graduation, I also did 2 full-time internships, 11 months in a consulting firm and 6 months in a life insurance company. And straight after my graduation, I came here to Edinburgh last year in the month of August. So today I'm going to talk about mainly 3 things. First, what is the difference between the earlier papers, CM, CS, and CB, compared to the later papers? Second, I'm also going to give you 2 myth-busters. And then lastly, I will also talk about my student life and how my experience has been here so far. So let me take a nice question to you. I think so you must have solved it in your school. So when I was 4, my sister was age 2. What will be her age when I will be 42? So the first thing in your mind would be she would be 40, obviously. 42 minus 2 would be 40. But this is not where the question stops. Think more. She can also be 41. She can also be 43. You don't know her exact birth date. There are many different possibilities. She could be adopted. You don't know her actual age. She could be dead by then. By the time I reach 40, she might be dead if I don't kill her. And she could be someone unknown. So I don't know, my real sister exists somewhere else and I don't know. And lastly, I love my imagination. She could travel to interstellar and she can eat slower if you know how time goes in space. So from this fun example, I wanted to explain you how the math part is different from the ideation part in the different papers. So the first line is about calculating what we did in CM1, CM2, CH2. But the later part is all about SP papers where we want to generate ideas, know about different possibilities. And it does not stop there. We have to understand while we are assessing and identifying risks, we also have to assess its impact, its significance given the life insurance portfolio, its situation. And if you can see, the first 2-3 points are logical and realistic, and the later points are out of my imagination. So let me now talk about 2 mythbusters. My first myth, which I've heard a lot, is these programs are not for experienced professionals and it is just for graduates like me who just graduated last year. But it's not true. One of my friends has around 4 to 5 years of experience, and most of the coursework where we are allowed to discuss, I have collaborated with her. She loves my imagination. I like to know from her experience. The first image which you can see is me giving a presentation on IFRS 17. It's a complicated standard, but I know one of my friends who has worked around 4 years with a regulator in South Africa. He told me that this were the training programs. Not only this, but we had also some insightful presentations on climate risk. We also had presentations on um, uh, ethical considerations on genetic modeling. And those insightful presentations gave us a lot of new things to learn, even as experienced, even as a student who is just being graduated. The next image which you can see is me doing a coursework. If you can see, the image might be blurred, but there's a coursework, then there's R programming, then there is assignment, then there's theory, and then there is Excel at the side in the small. So these courseworks are so realistic. So in work, when you will be working on some projects, you will have three different models, two different requirements, some clients specific tasks which you have to complete, and some random modeling and checking if your answers are correct or not. So when I was working in internships, I made tens of mistakes. But I'm sure after this program, I have honed the skills. I have learned a lot from the lecturer's experience, and I will use it to better my approach when I will be back in the industry. The second myth which I've heard about is it is all about academics. You just have to study throughout there. It is not true. It is not true at all. I have been in many different societies. I am in Indian society. I have established my own society, which Open Guard Society, which is on cyber security and open source networks. I even for the CES conference which Goni talked about, I was in the subcommittee and we enjoyed organizing that. And the right side image which you can see is we getting an award of the best event of the year. Out of 60 societies, our society has got the award of the best event of the year. There were hundreds of events, 50s of events taken place throughout the year. And this is the first time Student Actuarial Society has won an award. So it was a huge moment for us. So believe me, I'm cooking every day, I'm traveling every day. Apart from doing all this, I'm also doing some hours in part-time jobs. And apart from all this, I give my exams, and when the results will come, I'm hoping to get all the exemptions. So it is possible. It is not about all about academics. Enjoy your time. Some more about facilities at the uni. So I think library is a very good place. Here you can find spaces which are silent study rooms. I know a few of my friends cannot study in any noise. They cannot do assignments. They want the silence. And with the desktops there, you can work there. And in the basement, there are hundreds of books. You can just talk to the library and get the paperback copy and borrow it. The second image which you can see is about the log. It is one of my favorite places to go. My friends love to feed the ducks there. And yes, there's a whole pond inside the university. The campus is this huge. And there are a lot of computer labs where we usually learn about data science. And even for SP9, there are some things where we have to learn about R. So we have computer labs. And people tell me if the campus is so huge, it might be outside the city somewhere. But no, it is not true. It is very well connected to the city. There are three bus service lines directly starting and ending at Heriot-Watt University, 25, 35, and 34. There are two more bus services where Heriot-Watt University is a connecting stop, and you can get a bus in every 5 minutes. And you can reach to the city center in like 20 minutes in bus. And I am traveling every single day. So, and around over 150 lectures, I've just missed three. It's a huge achievement for the last semester. And last, but my personal favorite, grid building. It's a very high-end building, and there are high-end desktops. Now, I read a question in the chat box where they asked where is the school situated. It's in Edinburgh. I come from Mumbai, which is a very fast-paced city, and I was searching for a place which could offer me peace and tranquility. Edinburgh is just perfect for that. My one of the biggest reasons for choosing Heriot-Watt was Edinburgh city. I later came to know that it is also ranked as one of the happiest cities across Europe, and in springs, it's one of the best tourist attractions across Europe. And I can see Edinburgh changing color in winters. It goes white in snow. Then in springs, it is pink, and right now it is like pure leaf green. And it's amazing. There is castle, there are national museums, art galleries. And apart from all that, the culture is also something people don't realize how important it is. I have met very kind people. I have met very different people from different countries. Even in our class, there are students from Indonesia, Kenya, Kuwait, India, China, Malaysia, and it's always very nice to learn about their experiences and everything. So that's all from my side today. But if you have any more questions, if you want to know about something in more detail, and I know many of you have personal questions which might not be addressed today, just drop a message and say hi.
Amazing.
That's all
Thank
from me.
you so much, Krish. And I have to say, Krish has certainly been an expert in balancing excellent academics while also embracing student life and creating a really nice actuarial community amongst the class. And congratulations on your award, Krish. So thank you for
Thanks.
taking the time to talk to us today. And yeah, I think hopefully you've got the QR code, but you'll have my or email addresses as well afterwards on the slides to scan it later. Okay, before we just get to the Q&A, maybe just to wrap things up beforehand, I guess in summary, we have a wide range of MSc programs for you that help to get you ready to work as an actuary, regardless of what stage of your actuarial journey that you're at. We have many price reductions or scholarships available, whether it be the alumni discount or the academic excellence scholarship, which should help in terms of from a fee perspective. Our programs really are about getting you ready for work. And as Gani and Krish kind of touched on, we are very proud of our kind of graduate outcomes and our employment statistics from our programs. We embed it within our teaching and the courses, but you also have kind of those industry links and industry projects that can kind of add to that too in terms of getting you ready for work. We've been doing this for a long time. As Gani said, we were the first actuarial program in the UK. We have courses there for you if machine learning and automation, AI, data science is something that you're interested in. The big one, I suppose, is that we have the extra CIRA qualification that not all universities offer, particularly on the actuarial management with data science programs. And I guess you get to do all of this in the Financial Centre, Edinburgh in Scotland in the UK. And Krish has done a really good job of showing how nice Edinburgh is. And how you get a really nice balance between, I guess, campus life where there's green space and space to kind of focus on your academics, but then you're just a short bus into the city if that's something you want to enjoy. So I want to thank you all for your time. And at this point, I'm just going to go straight into the Q&A. I'm just going to leave a quick QR code up there, which takes you straight to the link to our websites for each of our programs. My email is also there. So Jane Gormley is my maiden name, or Jane Braithwaite is now my married name. So that's why my email is j.gormley@hw.ac.uk. So we'll go through questions now. If we don't get to your question, or if you have a follow-up question a little bit later on, please do email me, or you can ask Krish and Gani on Unibuddy as well. That's what we're here for. So definitely reach out if you feel that you haven't got your question answered or you have a follow-up. Okay, so let's go to the Q&A then. So the first question I see there is, I'd like to know the exam style for actuarial programs at Heriot-Watt. For example, do most courses comprise of just an exam at the end, or are there any tests, coursework, presentations, etc. throughout the semester? Good question. Hopefully kind of Gani touched on that as well, and you got some information around that. So usually the structure is that it's about 80% final exam in person, and then 20% is an assignment or coursework. So that might be you're required to do a presentation. I know they do that in the pensions course if you take that. In the likes of my course, you might be asked to do a report for a board of directors. You might be asked to do some kind of a query log or an audit of some company's numbers and help make sense of that. So the coursework, I suppose, often tries to be as practical as possible and applies kind of your theory into practical real life scenarios. So that's what the coursework is, 20%, and then the exam is 80% in-person final exam. At Heriot-Watt University aligns with the UK's IFOA exams. Can someone who has passed the SOA exams still gain recognition or acceptance into the UK actuarial field? Okay, so the SOA is the US actuarial body and the IFOA is the UK actuarial body. If you have passed some exams with the SOA and not the IFOA, then we can absolutely accept you into our actuarial programs. We'll take that into account as part of the entry requirements into our actuarial programs. So that's completely fine. If you want the IFOA to recognise some of those SOA exams, that's something you need to reach out to the IFOA on. I know they've changed their rules on that quite recently, so you're better just to go straight to the IFOA and ask if you can kind of remap your SOA exemptions into IFOA exams. But with us here at Heriot-Watt, we do accept the SOA exams as part of kind of your application, and we use that to decide which program is more appropriate for you. After completion of the Masters in Actuarial Science and Management, how many courses do I need to complete with the IFOA to be a fellow? Really good question. So if you perform well on the Actuarial Science and Management 2-year program, you get all of the exemptions from that program, you will only have your big essay red exam to do, and then a really small CB3 exam to do. So you've one big exam left and one small exam left. And then you just have to work through your work experience and you're a qualified actuary. So it's a really nice one to accelerate your way in through the exams, is that 2-year program. And next question is, I'm a BSc graduate from Heriot-Watt during 2021. I received 2 of the exemptions, and since then I've passed CM1, CS1. I'm awaiting results on P1 while planning to sit CM2 and CP2. Would I be considered for alumni discount? Yes, you'd absolutely be considered for alumni discount if you've done an undergraduate degree with us in 2021. So that's a 20% discount on fees. I'd like to know the degree that I must get to take exemption from certain actuarial exams. If I get 70% or equivalent, am I eligible for all exemptions offered? Or what are the rules? Okay, so the accreditation average for the actuarial management program is 60%. So if you get an average of 60% and a minimum C grade across all your courses, then you're eligible for all of the exemptions. SB9 sits separately outside of that accreditation average, so you have to get that one on its own in order to get that extra qualification. On the actuarial science program, that accreditation average number is 65%. So if you get 65% and above and an A to C grade across all your courses, then you're eligible for that accreditation average. You can get exemptions on a subject by subject basis, as I said, so not using the accreditation average. In that case, it's usually between 60 and 65% that is the grade that you need to get in that specific subject to get the exemption on a subject by subject basis, but that can change year on year. But the 60% on the actuarial management program and the 65% on the actuarial science program, the accreditation average numbers, they don't change. They're set in stone. Hopefully that makes sense. I completed my bachelor's in actuarial science in Malaysia with 5 IFOA exemptions. If I pursue a master's in actuarial management, can these exemptions be transferred or reduce the number of subjects I need to take? Okay, so I guess it depends what exemptions that you already have. So for example, if you've already got the CP1 exemption, then you can potentially claim credit for prior learning. That's something that I think would be worth emailing me directly on your specific situation, because it can vary depending on what exemptions you already have. So we would kind of usually take that into account when we're looking at your application. I'm just going to make sure that I've covered there. Starting on the actuarial science program, is it possible to switch to the 2-year program, the actuarial science and management program, or would you just finish the actuarial science MSc and then do the actuarial management one? Are there any disadvantages of doing this? Okay, so on this one, my advice is if you're not sure between the 1-year and the 2-year program, my advice would be to apply for the actuarial science and management program first, because I'm not sure if this particular person who asked the question needs a visa or not to do this program. But often there can be more complications with getting a visa for a 2-year program than a 1-year program. So apply for the 2-year program first, and that way you know that you're going to get your 2nd-year discount on your actuarial management part, because you won't be eligible for the discount if you just do the MSc actuarial science and then want to do the MSc in actuarial management. So the discount on the 2nd year is really the big bonus, and then it avoids any visa complications. So if you apply for the 2-year program and you start in September and realize, actually, I only want to do 1 year, you can transfer from the 2-year to the 1 year in September. So that would be my advice at this application stage, and then you can make that decision closer to the time. But yeah, the big perk, I guess, with the 2-year program is the discount on fees rather than doing 2 separate programs. I think we've answered that question where the campus is. It's in beautiful Edinburgh, just outside, with a bus into the city centre. When will the self-taught R and Python courses be available for incoming students? So as soon as you are you have access to our systems and that you have a Heriot-Watt email, you'll have access to our VLE or VLE system, which is Canvas. And on Canvas, those self-taught R and Python courses are available to you essentially before any teaching starts. So you'll have a few weeks to actually do those before you even start, which is quite nice because it kind of gets you up to speed before you even start, if that's something that you're interested in. Can I apply for a scholarship with a third party such as Chevening or Commonwealth? Absolutely. Many of our students do make use of the Chevening scholarship in particular. So that's certainly something you're able to do. Any advice about using the career service at Heriot-Watt? Do they have good contacts in actuarial science? And when would you suggest starting to work with the career service and applying for jobs? I think this is actually a really excellent question and very forward thinking when we're only at May at this point. Our career service has a dedicated person who's focused on the actuarial and maths and statistics department. So our focus is on looking at graduate jobs in the actuarial space. Her name is Lindsay Wilson. She's excellent and has been doing this for many years. My biggest advice would be to try and book in with her as soon as you arrive in September, because she'll give you a very good overview of what you need to do. She might advise you in terms of where you need to get your CV up to scratch, because many of the graduate jobs for the following September, the job descriptions and the application process actually starts in about October, November time. So it's really good to be on the ball with that from early on in September. So my advice would be to go to Lindsay in her career service and book in with her. So again, when you get an account set up with Heriot-Watt, you have this Heriot-Watt portal and you can book a slot with her career service, which will automatically get you a slot with Lindsay in her career service. The fellow qualification mentions needing one SA subject. Which university courses modules correspond with the SA subjects? How do I choose modules for CB1 and CB3? Okay, so for the fellow qualification, that's the SA, the red exam that you can't do at university. So it's only really one that you can't do at university. So that doesn't map to any of the university courses. However, if you take the SP2 subject or SP subject, for example, so if you wanted to do the SA subject in life insurance, the red exam in life insurance, then you could take the SP subjects in life insurance, which would be SP2. And we do try to introduce you to some of the kind of key concepts and key materials from the SA subject to give you a little bit of head start when it comes to studying for the SA, but we don't offer a direct exemption to the SA subjects, and no universities do. There was another part to that question about which courses map to CB1 and CB3. Those would be I'd need to get the exact names of them, but I think it's economics, and there's a finance one that map to CB1 is the economics or the finance one. I need to get the exact name. CB3 again isn't offered as an exemption at university. It's quite a straightforward kind of exam. It's like a continuous assessment type exam that you do. It's a business scenario thing that you do online at the IFOA. So we don't offer exemption from CB3, which is kind of the smaller exam. Would be grateful to know more about the part-time program and also the possibility of running the part-time program for a student with a postgraduate working visa. Yes. Okay. So there's a few questions on part-time, and I guess the possibility of doing the program part-time kind of varies on a case-by-case basis. So I guess if you're interested in the part-time program, I would send myself an email, so j.gormley@hw.ac.uk, and I can work through your kind of options on the part-time side with you individually. If you do the course part-time, instead of doing, say, 8 courses across the 2 semesters, you would do 4 courses across 2 semesters, and then the following year you do another 4 courses across 2 semesters. So it's kind of spread over 2 years rather than 1 year. But I guess your ability to do that kind of depends on a number of things. So reach out to me and we'll talk through that individually. Oh, it's amazing to see so many questions here. We'll take a few more before we wrap up. And it's really nice to see so much interest. Is there a possibility that most of the assessment can be coursework driven? I have a young family and find it difficult to be able to find time to research, revise. Good question. So there are some courses which are more heavily weighted towards coursework. And I'm not sure which program that you're interested in doing, but say on the actuarial science program, there's one course that's 100% coursework. And on our actuarial management program, there's one which is 50% coursework, 50% exam. However, most of our courses, unfortunately, are 80% exam, 20% coursework. And that is required of us at the university to make sure that we are meeting the standards of the IFOA accreditation agreement. So I guess that definitely won't be changing. There are some courses that are more heavily weighted to coursework, but largely our courses are 80-20 or 70-30, depending on the course that you're taking. With the advent of AI, how confident is the industry that an actuary will always be in demand? Computer programming, statistics, math are fields that can be easily performed by AI. Yeah, that's really good. Okay, there's so much conversation around an actuary's role in the space of AI. And I certainly don't think the role of an actuary is going away. So I suppose years ago, this type of conversation came into play when Excel came out and whether actuaries would still be relevant when Excel was produced, because actuaries used to do all of the maths by hand. And so they used to do all the math by hand. We didn't have Excel. Then when Excel came around, what happened is that actuaries adapted their skills. So you still need that math and statistical knowledge from a human perspective. And they're able to kind of explain, really the kind of bonus of being an actuary is their ability to have that really good technical knowledge, but communicate that technical knowledge and use their actuarial and professional judgment that I talked about on the webinar to communicate those things to other parties, okay? So actuaries have this really unique skill of kind of having a wider lens or a wider perspective on a business. They're not just focused on one department, one team, or one specific calculation. They can kind of see the business as a whole. That's why it's quite a well-rounded program and skill set that you get to qualify as an actuary. And many are certainly getting employed by AI companies or going down the space of AI because they have that kind of actuarial data science statistical skill set. If you gain exemptions in some purple exams, does that mean you pass? If so, does that mean no chance to gain CB1 and CB3? Okay, so if you get exemptions in some purple exams, does that mean you pass? Yes, so if you get an exemption from the CM1 exam, so the courses that map to the CM1 exam here at Heriot-Watt, it means, so you've got, say, above whatever, 60-65% in those exams, that means you do not have to sit that exam with the IFOA. So you have one less exam to do to qualify as an actuary. You can get an exemption from CB1. CB3 is the one that you can't get an exemption from. And SA is the one you can't get an exemption from. Also, what job do you have to do to get the SA exemption? So I guess you can sit the SA exam by yourself. You don't have to have a job to do that. But it's just that you cannot get an exemption from it at the university stage. So I guess it's helpful if you get an actuarial job while you're sitting your SA exam, because it gives you some context in terms of applying your maths and statistics in a real life scenario, which you can bring through to answering your exam questions in the SA exam. But there's no specific requirement on what type of job that you need. What are the different ways in which we'll be assessed or graded during the course? I think we've covered that one. So I guess the exams are all written in person. This coursework could be using your computer, laptop. You could be using or Python, Excel, Word, etc. Can this project completed with an employee outside the UK but within the EU? I presume your question is, can the industry project be with an employer outside of the UK? We don't have experience of that happening in the past. I'm not saying it's not possible, but we need to reach out to our coordinator of the industry projects to see that. But typically, it's employers in the UK that we work with for our industry projects. So if you have a specific employer in mind outside of the UK that you do want to do an industry project with, maybe reach out to me. Let me know, and I can talk with our industry project coordinator to see if it's possible or not. Please, could you repeat what the contract hours per week are? Do we have any remote study options? And do you have any information on how to start in this career directly through work if remote study is not an option? So contact hours per week are, so you do 4 courses per semester as a minimum. Some do 5, particularly on the actuarial science program, because they want to get all the exemptions possible. And for each course is 4 hours of contact time per week. Okay. All of our courses are in-person lectures, tutorials, apart from one course in semester 2. If you want to do the SP5 subject, that's done online, the lecture. Everything else is in person. So really, we don't offer that kind of remote study option. There may be some videos available of lectures and stuff, but really to benefit from this program and these programs and to perform well in them, really the advice is to be there in person. So if you wanted to go down the route of becoming an actuary through work, you would need to get a role maybe as an actuarial analyst or an actuarial trainee, and hope that your work would sponsor and fund you to do those exams through the IFOA. What will the strength of the class for the MSc Actuarial Science and Management program be? Assuming that means how many people will be in that program. So in your first year, you'll usually be in a class of maybe 30, 40 students, depending year on year. And then in the actuarial management program, there's about 50 students. So in the second year, you'll be in a class with 50 students. It was mentioned that each course is split into 2 papers. Are they both worth the same, or is one worth a higher percentage than the others? Yes, so most of our exemptions are split across 2 courses, particularly on the actuarial management program. So, you know, the SP2 life insurance exam would be split across semester 1 and semester 2 courses. And that's not the case for all SPs. So if you wanted to do a general insurance courses, SP7 and SP8, they're just one course in one semester. But for the ones that are split across 2 semesters, usually they're split 50% and 50%. There's 2 exceptions to that. That's SP9, which is split 40-60%, and CM2, which is split 33-67%. But the rest of them are largely 50-50 if they are split across 2 semesters. Are the exams done on paper or on Word? I know the FA exams are done on Word. Yes, okay. So typically our in-person exams are done on paper. However, if there's a case where you need to use a laptop computer and you have a disability or a learning need that requires you to do your exam on your laptop or computer, the disability service will assess you and allow you to do that. But typically everyone writes on pen and paper. Maybe I think there's a few questions in terms of what the entry requirements to get in. Okay, so for our MSc Actuarial Science program or our 2-year Actuarial Science and Management program, we typically look to see if you're good at maths, if you can perform well at maths, if you have a good understanding of things like calculus, algebra, and have a good mathematical undergraduate degree. So that doesn't mean it has to be a BSc in maths. It could be a BSc in engineering or a science type degree where you've done a lot of maths, or even economics where you've done a lot of maths. Because we want to be confident that you can perform well in our actuarial science program. So that's why we look to see, are you good at maths? So we look for an undergraduate degree in that space. And we look for you to have the equivalent of a 2-1 undergraduate degree in the UK for those actuarial science and management programs. Then for our actuarial management or actuarial management with data science programs, usually we'll look for you to either have a really strong undergraduate degree in actuarial science, or to see that you have cleared or have exemptions from at least 4 of the purple IFOA exams. So you definitely need CM1 and CS1 to do actuarial management and actuarial management with data science. And then you'll need at least 2 more out of CM2, CS2, CB1 or CB2. So at least 4 of them. Another thing we look at is your work experience, particularly on the actuarial management programs. So if you have some good work experience and you've cleared some of the exams, the IFOA exams, then that's another really nice combination. And certainly you could be eligible for the actuarial scholarship for academic excellence in that case, if you have some work experience to put with that. Again, yeah, so a strong undergraduate degree in actuarial science, or that you have exemptions from or exam passes from the earlier IFOA exams, or also add in your application if you have some work experience, because you could be eligible for that scholarship as well. Oh, I've lost my Q&A box, so I'll just grab it quickly. We might take 2 more questions and then we might wrap things up if that's all right. I'll just grab the Q&A box again. It's amazing to see so many questions come in. Since SP7 and SP8 are newly introduced, could you give some more insights about that? Who will be teaching them, and what are the future prospects for general insurance students? Okay, nice question. Okay, so SP7 and SP8 are the 2 general insurance courses, just as a reminder. They're available on our actuarial management and actuarial management with data science programs. These courses will typically be taken as a pair, because if you want to specialize in general insurance, you'll typically want to do both of those SP subjects to go on to be able to do your SA subject, SA3, I think it is, for general insurance. So they are done across 1 semester each. So you would do SP7 in semester 1, SP2 in semester 2. They are taught by either researchers or people who have worked in the space of general insurance. So they'll be taught across that semester. It'll be the same as any other course. You'll have at least 4 hours of contact time. It'll be examined 80% exam, 20% coursework. And really, they'll be run the exact same way that every other course is run on the programme. I guess the reason you might be wondering why we're making kind of a big deal of that, we got quite a lot of questions from prospective students and applicants throughout the year whether these SP subjects would be available in the university. And so we developed kind of materials and programmes based on that to kind of meet the need of students and students asking us to do that. We have noticed as well, particularly in the last year, a lot of our graduates actually went on to be employed with actuarial general insurance companies. So I guess we wanted to further equip our students to have that skill set, so that if they do want to apply for jobs in the space of general insurance, particularly those if they want to apply for some jobs in general insurance in London, that they have that kind of background knowledge if that's something that they're interested in. As well as that, students who have an interest in data science and machine learning often also have an interest in general insurance, because in general insurance, it's moving quite fast in terms of automating things and using machine learning techniques and to estimate the probability of future claims and the impact of future claims. So SP7 and 8 are a really nice natural fit for those that want to take those machine learning courses on the actuarial management with data science programs. So hopefully that, sorry, your question has now disappeared, but hopefully that answers the different elements of your questions on the general insurance programs. It's I guess very similar to the contents that you would cover on the SP7 and 8 exams. So if you wanted to get a sense of the types of questions that might be asked or the types of materials that would be covered, you could look up the syllabus of those IFOA exams, SP7 and 8, and look at some past exam papers of SP7 and 8 exams to get a sense of the types of content and material that would be covered under those exams. Okay, one more maybe. What materials or assistance are available for students who've taken some of the preliminary exams, who are self-studying for the rest and want to pursue an MSc in actuarial management program? I'm not exactly sure on that question, so feel free to email me exactly what you mean by that. So we have, you know, for each of our courses, we have a huge amount of PDF notes, we have lecture slides, we have tutorial questions, solutions, past exam papers and solutions for each of the courses that you'll take. I'm not sure if that's getting at the question. So you're usually really well equipped in terms of materials to study for these courses and exams. And we have quite strict rules at the university in terms of the quality and standard of the materials that we provide. So I definitely can reassure you, and hopefully Chris and Gunny can agree with me that you will be well equipped with enough materials to perform well on each of your courses. Okay, there's a huge amount of questions there. I think we're going to wrap things up at this point. What I will do is I'll put my email in the chat just as a final reminder. You have the Unibuddy QR scanner as well, if that's something that you want to ask some questions to Chris and Gunny. But in the meantime, I just want to say a huge thank you for the amazing engagement on this webinar. It's really heartwarming to see such interest in our actuarial programs And I just want to say thank you to Gareth for helping to host this, and Gonnie and Krish as well for giving up their time to come along and speak to you about their experiences. I hope to see many of your applications come through. I know I've already seen many of your applications come through already, and some of you already have an offer, and congratulations on that. And hopefully we'll see you all in September. Looking forward to seeing you in September, and hopefully the sun stays with us here in Edinburgh to September to welcome you to our lovely campus. So thank you very much. Oh, thanks.
Thank you. Jane, can I just ask one question? One thing that wasn't covered that much really was the intake dates. You've just kind of mentioned it there about September. Hopefully see many of you guys in September, but there will be many students as well that apply for, we mentioned it earlier, Chevening, Commonwealth, Marshall scholarships that might not be accepted, but we'll look for next year.
Sure.
So are your intake dates September, very, very strictly, or do you have January intakes, or is it September 2026 you're also looking for now?
Excellent question. Thank you, Gareth. Okay, so our intakes are every September, so we don't take a January intake on these programs. If this September isn't going to suit you from a funding perspective or whatever reason, and you're looking for the September 2026 intake, usually your applications open around September time. I know we're looking to bring that forward a little bit, but it should be open around September time for the following September. So yeah, you can get your application in then as soon as you're kind of more sure about things. For the moment, we're just reviewing those applications in respect of this coming September, but that window will open once we kind of close the applications for the previous, or for this cohort, I guess. A natural follow-on question might be, when are applications closed for this September? That will be early July, just to give time for everyone to sort any visa or any other kind of issues. So if you can get your application in before that, ideally now, and you can start planning for September already, that's really okay, applications close the 15th of August, but I think for students that are international students, I think we do recommend that they apply in early July to give them time to kind of process those things. Okay, but they officially close on the 15th of August. Thank you, Sarah. Sarah's from our admissions team is helping with that.
Thank you, Jane.
Cheers,
Jane, I'm going to have to wrap things up. Thank you very much. If anyone has any questions, like Jane mentioned, please email Jane. I've put her email address in the chat many times, but we will also reach out to you as well. There's been so much interest in this webinar. Like Jane mentioned earlier, it's very heartwarming to see that those that really care about what they're talking about have such interest as well. So thank you very much. Thank you to Christian and Gonnie as well. Thank you for your time. It's always nice to hear current students give up their time and talk so passionately about what they do. And obviously you've got the Uni Buddy system there as well. So I'd encourage anyone to make use of that tool. But for now, thank you very much, Jane, Krish, and Gonnie. Hope to see you soon later on in the year. Anyone's got any questions, webinars@postgradsolutions.com, and we will reach out to you. Thank you very much, guys. Take care.
Thanks, Gareth. Thanks, everyone. Have a good day.